Part 155. Back to the 60s, The Struggle Career of a Charmed Wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 1541. In an instant, Su Maixiang felt that her previous showing off was like a joke. Fu Bao had no idea that her red woolen gown had aroused the jealousy of others. She was very happy when she saw her mother coming to pick her up. She ran all the way to her mother with rosy cheeks and said, "Mom, you came to pick me up, not to wish me the best, uncle. Uncle, I wish you a hard time cooking at home. I'm here to pick you and Yan Yan up." Feng Qingxiu reached out to take her daughter's school bag and Yan Yan's army green canvas satchel. "Yan Yan, you hold it? Sister, let's go home together. Didn't you say you wanted to eat the lotus root box made by Uncle Zhu yesterday? Uncle Zhu made it for you today." When it comes to food, Feng Qingxiu has never wronged her children. In addition, she received a lot of overseas remittance coupons to buy a lot of grain and oil and shipped it here, and mixed in a lot of supplies from the space. There is a reason to eat fine food at home. Ah, lotus root box. The two children were so happy that they followed Feng Qingxiu home hand in hand. Feng Qingxiu was more cautious. Fu Bao and Ye Yan were picked up every day. 99% of the students went home on their own. There was no danger in the compound. Su Maixiang's appearance was just to show off his new clothes. Shenfeng swallowed his saliva and said to his mother, "Mom, I also want to eat the lotus root box, and I want to eat the stuffed meat." "What to eat? You know how to eat? How can your dad have money to buy meat for you on such a small salary?" His appearance is not as good as Feng Qingxiu's, and the woolen coat he finally bought is not as good as the one Lu Tianhui wears. Su Maixiang, with a sigh of relief in his heart, he didn't have any good feelings toward his only son, so he walked forward alone angrily. Shenfeng followed behind with an old khaki canvas school bag in his arms. "Mom, Mom." Su Maixiang walked very fast. Shenfeng trotted all the way, and mother and son passed Feng Qingxiu and walked in front. Feng Qingxiu didn't know what Su Maixiang was thinking. She didn't expect it for a moment. After all, Fu Bao's red woolen coat was made around the spring festival. It had been worn for a spring and was not new. Others know Su Maixiang better, that is, a middle-aged woman who heard Su Maixiang show off her new coat before. Her name is Geng Xiaoqin. She is the wife of Kui Xiaobo, the commander of the guard battalion. She is holding her 7-year-old son who has just entered kindergarten with one hand and sees the wind. Qingxiu looked puzzled and couldn't help but whisper, "Sister-in-law, your daughter will not be happy if your daughter steals her limelight." Feng Qingxiu let out a sigh and looked at her daughter. Fu Bao looked back with big innocent eyes. Geng Xiaoqin smiled and said, "Sister-in-law, your daughter's name is Lu Tianhui, right?" Seeing Feng Qingxiu nodding, she continued, "This dress from Tianhui is really beautiful, isn't it cheap?" "It's definitely not cheap, and it's not easy to buy. You can't find this kind of material in ordinary department stores." Feng Qingxiu understood the reason why Su Maixiang was angry, and felt a little funny in her heart. "Last year, I made a foreign friend and gave us some overseas remittance coupons. When I saw this piece of material being sold in the friendship store, I bought it. Normally it's really uncommon. Imported goods are indeed not cheap, but the price is not as good as Comrade Su Maixiang's woolen coat. It looks good, the color is bright, and the style is fashionable. The little girl looks really beautiful in it." Geng Xiaoqin looked at it carefully and reached out to touch it. It was soft and warm. "Sister-in-law, the material is better than Comrade Su Maixiang's. It feels good when you touch it new." Feng Qingxiu smiled slightly. "Let's go pick up the triplets first, see you later." Back to the 60s, The Struggle Career of a Charmed Wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 1542. The triplets are not as studious as Zibao and Fu Bao. Although they are smarter than ordinary children, their main tasks are eating and playing like ordinary children. Fortunately, As parents, Lu Zhang and Feng Qingxiu only hope that they will grow up healthily and robustly. They are not required to be extremely smart, so the triplets are currently throwing steel cannons with other children, having a bit of fun. To throw a steel cannon is to roll a ball of wet mud into a mud ball or a mud egg and throw it on the hand to make a snap sound. Lu Erxian was the strongest and fell the loudest. He received cheers and applause from everyone every time, so this kid waved to everyone, like a leader inspecting the troops, making Feng Qingxiu feel like carrying him home right away. Impulse. Feng Qingxiu came to ask them to eat. Dun Dun and Zhuang, who were squatting, immediately stood up. Only Lu Erxian had his ears stuffed with donkey hair. Dun Dun, you and Zhuang come home with us to eat the lotus root box, not for Xiang Fu Bao knew better how to treat his younger brother. As soon as he said this, Lu Xiang dropped the mud dumplings in his hands and rushed over. I want to eat the lotus root box, anyone who doesn't give him food is a bad guy. Wang Quilin smiled and called to Dun Dun and Zhuang, I'll bring you over to play after dinner. Dun Dun and Zhuang were more obedient. Although they didn't want to go home, they still walked over obediently. Their 4 little hands were covered with mud. Fortunately, their fingernails were cut very short, unlike some children whose fingernails were filled. Dark dirt or mud. After returning home, Feng Qingxiu took them to wash their hands and faces and change their coats covered with mud and dust. While they were eating lotus root boxes stuffed with pork and bacon stewed with radish, Shen Feng and Su Maiziang drank a bowl of spinach soup for 1 penny in a restaurant in the military compound. The soup was soaked in corn crumbs and brown rice, and served with a stir-fried dish. Shredded radish. People who were familiar with Su Maiziang's character saw this and immediately knew what was going on, secretly shaking their heads. Such people really can't live a good life. Shen Qing's salary is not low, with a monthly allowance of about 200 yuan. Su Maiziang's purchase of 2 new clothes and new shoes in a year and a half is nothing at all. Even buying a watch is a matter of course, and no one will say that she doesn't. I should buy it, but she has to wear new clothes and new shoes every month. Because of this, she goes hungry every month, which really makes people don't know what to say. After dinner, Shen Qing's face turned blue when he heard that his wife and children had eaten spinach soup and shredded radish for lunch. When someone asked him if Su Maiziang used his salary this month to buy a woolen coat again, Shen Qing said angrily, I'm just afraid that the 2 of them won't have money to eat in the second half of the month, so I specially deducted 50 yuan from my salary when I paid it at the beginning of the month. I didn't give the money to Xiaofeng's mother. I gave her 30 yuan yesterday as living expenses for the rest of this month. Not to mention white rice, big steamed buns with big meat every day, I can always eat medium-sized meals. Battalion Commander Su glanced at him and couldn't help but remind him, I went to the service center early this morning to buy things, and I seemed to meet sister-in-law Mei Xiang buying leather shoes. It was the pair of Lantang leather shoes she wore today, which cost more than 20 yuan. Knowing what kind of virtue Su Maiziang was, he still dared to give her so much money. It became a joke to blackmail Ye Qian for 100 yuan last month. Shen Qing was okay. After learning about the incident, he quickly took 100 yuan from his private money and returned it to Ye Qian. He apologized profusely, but Ye Qian did not accept it and only said it was for Shen Feng. Nutrition fees and stress fees. Shen Qing is good in all aspects, but she doesn't have a good wife who is diligent and thrifty. This is what many people think. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Back to the 60s, the struggle career of a charmed wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 1543. Thrifty and thrifty? Oh my God, you want to find someone who is diligent and thrifty, don't marry me. Shen Qing came home at night and scolded Su Maiziang. Sumaiziang suddenly became furious. After all, it's not because you don't have the ability to earn yen. Look at what the army commander's wife and children are wearing, and look at me, even my children are not dressed as well. Shen Qing's face was not only blue, but also black as ink. Sumaiziang, he growled, don't go too far. Why did you drag the army commander's sister-in-law into this? My sister-in-law has been here for more than a month, and she hasn't been wearing new clothes and new shoes every now and then like you. You want to buy clothes and shoes, I didn't stop you. There's nothing wrong with liking to dress up. You are my revolutionary partner, and I should satisfy all your needs. Even veterans in the army want to buy an imported watch when they have money. This is human nature. I just want you to save enough living expenses for you and your children to buy what you want. Don't let yourself and your children go hungry. It's uncomfortable to be hungry. Who said I'm hungry? Who said I'm hungry for your son? Who said that? Ask him to come over and confront me. More than 10 years ago, I couldn't get such a meal, but now I'm so picky. Get up. Sumaiziang crossed her arms and frowned. When Shenfeng saw his parents quarreling, he was so frightened that he huddled up and hid in his room, not daring to say a word. He also wants to eat meat. He has not eaten meat for a long time. Only when his father is at home will he go to a restaurant with his father to eat peach blossom noodles. The roasted pork and braised eggs in the noodles are delicious, but he dare not. He said he was afraid of being beaten by his mother. Seeing that his wife had no regrets, Shen Qing was a little tired and held his forehead. Okay, I can't convince you, why don't you stop talking? From now on, you will be paid 150 yuan every month. You can do whatever you want, buy clothes if you want, buy shoes if you want. I will leave the remaining 50 yuan to Shenfeng for living expenses. Sumaiziang glared and said angrily, Shen Qing, does your son eat gold? Does he eat 50 yuan a month? 50 yuan can buy more than 2 kilograms of wool thread to knit a sweater for yourself. Do you want Shenfeng to eat a few cents worth of meals every day? Shen Qing finally got angry. Are you a mother? At noon, soup costs 1 cent, vegetables cost 5 cents, rice costs 5 cents at most, or steamed buns cost 5 cents. The total cost of a meal is less than 20 cents. Among them, Sumaiziang also ate vegetables, which cost her morning and evening. The price is a little less, a bowl of noodles only costs 8 cents. If she feeds the children like this, 3 meals in total, can Shenfeng spend 50 cents? Why am I not a mother anymore? Which meal did I starve him of? Sumaiziang retorted. You didn't starve him. You just let him live without enough to eat. You didn't give him any meat or star. He couldn't buy a new piece of clothing in 3 years. Shen Qing said coldly, you just thinking about yourself, you just want to be well dressed and smart enough to be praised as a flower, but don't you think about it, which of the respected sisters-in-law in the compound relies on their appearance? Okay, are you dissatisfied with me? Why don't you marry me if you're dissatisfied? Marry someone who is diligent, thrifty, and well educated. Marry me and use my natal family's influence to climb to the position of group leader. Why don't you fall out? Recognize someone. After hearing this, Shen Qing's face suddenly changed color. Back to the 60s, the struggle career of a charmed wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 1544. No man wants to hear that he relied on his father-in-law to gain a powerful position. What's more, Sujunju's family is relatively complicated and he can't even take care of his own children. Sujunlin has no ability. He has been able to get where he is today thanks to his own hard work for more than 20 years. The only thing that relied on his father-in-law's family was probably that others did not deliberately suppress him or let him give up his position to others for the sake of the Su family. If Sumaiziang hadn't always been aggressive and blindly pursued beautiful clothes, which had brought a great bad atmosphere to the army compound, then he, Shenxing, would be more than just a deputy commander now. Shenxing and Yes Yangqian joined the army in the same year, and they were once the closest comrades in arms. Even though Yes Yangqian was from a good background, when it came to marching and fighting, Yes Yangqian was not as good as him who came from a poor peasant background. His skills were not as good as him, and his brain was not as flexible as him. After 3 or 4 years in the army, Yes Yangqian was always subordinate to him until 2 years ago. People are arranged to get married by the organization. Yes Yangqian married a literary and art soldier from the working class, named Tang Xian, while he married Su Maixiang, both of whom were well established and Miao Hong. More than 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. Afraid of being influenced by Ye Zhenjun, Tang Xian decisively divorced Ye Qianqian, but what about him? The future has fallen a long way, and the marriage and life are in a mess. What a wife does often affects her husband's future, especially in the army, which has a huge impact. Shenxing liked Su Maixiang at the beginning. He never asked her to be a good wife and mother, nor did he dislike Su Maixiang because his future was affected. He just hoped that Su Maixiang could take care of her family life while dressing up. At least it makes no sense to ensure the diet and nutrition of yourself and your children. Hearing the hurtful words Su Maixiang still said in favor of her mother's family, Shenxing suddenly lost the strength to speak, took 2 steps back, sat on the sofa, and looked at her quietly. What? You have nothing to say, Su Maixiang said proudly. Her mother was right when she was alive. She had to hold the man down tightly so that he could not find the palm of Tathagata Buddha. Her mother's family was the best supporter, and she had to treat herself better and dress up more beautifully to make the man fall in love with her. Be honest with yourself, otherwise the money you saved will be given to some shameless goblin. Isn't her mother an example? Only a few years after his death, her father married that little goblin Bai Shui. He didn't even care about Su Ping and Suan. He only cared about the little goblin and the little goblin she gave birth to. He gave all his wages to them and didn't give a dime to himself. Shenxing didn't respond. He picked up the military uniform on the clothes rack and pushed the door open. After going down to the family building, the cold wind blew, and Shenxing's mind became clearer. She regretted not taking her son out. She should at least take him out to eat a bowl of hot peach blossom noodles. Ye Qianqian held his son's hand and walked over. He was slightly startled when he saw Shenxing smoking under the street lamp. Shenxing, what are you doing here? Why don't you go home? It's autumn and it's very cold outside. Shenxing heard Ye Qianqian's words and smiled bitterly. I just came out of home. I don't want to stay at home anymore. Where did you two come from? Have you eaten? If not, let's go to a restaurant to drink. After eating, we ate at the army chief's house. By the way, he brought this brat like me back to live with me for 2 days. I'm on vacation and can spend time with him. Ye Qianqian patted his son's head with a smile on his face. He smiled and said, this kid was so happy living in the army chief's house that he finally managed to sneak out. Back to the 60s, the struggle career of a charmed wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 1545. When Shenxing heard this, he suddenly remembered that Ye Yan had been staying at the Lu family recently. Looking under the faint moonlight and lights, Shenxing found that Ye Yan seemed to be a little fatter than when he saw him 2 months ago, looked very good, had a little more smile on his face, and was wearing new clothes. Ye Yan is living well in the army chief's house, Shenxing said. Yes, Yangqian thought of what he heard about the Shen family today. He changed his mind and said with a smile, the army commander always said that he was a soldier brought out by my father. He was very nostalgic. Sister-in-law Qingxiu also always said that my father and mother were here. He was very kind to Zibao when he was in the border guard force, but now he is very kind to Ye Yan. He is no different from his own child. Otherwise, how can he be said to be happy or not? Who is Zibao? Shen Qing thought the name was unfamiliar, but he knew that Lu Tianhui's nickname was Fuebao. The eldest son of the army commander, his nickname is Zibao and his eldest name is Lu Tianmao. He is a very smart boy. Now he lives in his hometown in the countryside with the army commander's old father. Ye Qian looked down at his son. If it weren't for this kid, he is unwilling to leave me, and I want to send him to my parents. Ye Yan immediately grabbed his sleeve, shook his head and said, Dad, I'm obedient. Don't send me to my grandparents. I don't want to go to them. I want to be with you. Okay, don't send me away. I won't send you away. I'm only your son. How can I be willing to let you leave? Yes, Yang Qian quickly comforted him. Only then did Ye Yan calm down. Shen Qing felt a little envious. You guys go upstairs quickly, it's very cold at night, don't freeze the children. The same goes for you, go home early and take care of yourself. Shen Qing wandered around the courtyard for a while, and spent 30.8 cents to buy a peach blossom noodles in a restaurant. He didn't bring a lunchbox, but brought back the bowl with the noodles. Shenfeng suddenly smiled and devoured it. Sumaiziang swallowed a few mouthfuls of saliva. Seeing that Shen Qing had no intention of asking her to eat, she entered the bedroom and locked the door in anger. Shen Qing ignored it, slept in the same room with his son that night, and whispered to him, Tomorrow morning, Dad will go to the restaurant to pay money and food stamps. You go to the restaurant to eat every morning, noon, and evening, and you can order whatever you want. No waste. Shenfeng's eyes lit up. Really, Dad? Can I eat meat buns tomorrow? Okay, Shen Qing nodded. Dad has no other requirements for you. I only hope that you will be a good boy and become a national swimming talent when you grow up. We can't fight with others or do bad things. The Shen family and the Ye family are separated by a wall. This side is the bed of Shen Qing and his son, and that is the room of Ye Qian and his son. The sound insulation of the house is relatively poor. Yes, Yang Qian is also very smart and can hear Shen Qing's words clearly. He can't help but Zhu shook his head, beckoned to his son who was standing by the bed and said, Come up and sleep, why are you lingering? Ye Yan came over and muttered, I live well at Aunt Lu's house. Dad, why do you have to take me home? The quilts at our house are smelly, but the quilts at Aunt Lu's house are fragrant. You're living well, right? Yes, Yang Qian felt a little sad. Ye Yan threw himself on the bed and rolled into his arms. Dad, I like Aunt Lu, I really like it. Aunt Lu is so kind. She makes me clothes and shoes, gives me delicious food, and teaches me how to read and write. Dad, is this how my mother feels? I think Aunt Lu treats me better than Shenfeng's mother. Shenfeng didn't have enough to eat at noon, and his stomach was roaring. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Back to the 60s, The Struggle Career of a Charmed Wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 1546. Ye Qian quickly covered his mouth and glanced at the plastered wall guiltily. He wondered if Shen Qing next door heard these words. Fortunately, he had made a decision. Shenfeng would not be hungry in the future. Okay, go to bed. Your Uncle Lu will have a rest tomorrow. I will take you to buy groceries and deliver them there early in the morning. Ye Yan closed his eyes happily. The so-called reciprocation, the Lu family was kind to Ye Yan, and yes, Yang Qian was so grateful that he naturally treated them twice as much. He went to the food service department before dawn and bought a big piece of pork belly. He used up all the meat tickets and bought another ribs. And a bunch of radish and green vegetables. When he came back, he took his son to the restaurant to buy 40 meat and vegetable buns and 10 fried dough sticks. Before leaving, he did not forget to tell the chef, I'll keep the money for you. Make me a braised carp dish at noon, a big braised pork elbow, I'll come and get it at noon. He inquired about it and found out that the restaurant had fish available today, so it was not an embarrassment to the chef. Lu Zhang came back from a run as usual, and happened to meet his father and son at the door of their house. Looking at the big and small bags they brought, he couldn't help but said, "Why are you so polite? I didn't buy anything, but the meat ticket is about to expire. It's a waste if I don't buy it." "Yes," Yang Qian said with a smile. He considered that Lu Zhang was off today, but he forgot that Feng Qingxiu was on duty today. So, when the meal was ready at noon, Lu Zhang asked his family and Ye Qian and his son to eat first, while he served food to his wife. The small half of the big lunch box wrapped in a quilt was filled with white rice, braised pork ribs, braised pork, and braised elbow meat. It occupies more than half of the lunch box, and the red and oily soup soaks into the rice, and the aroma is fragrant. "I can't finish eating." Feng Qingxiu took a piece of braised pork and stuffed it into his mouth. She has her own separate office, and except for the doctors and nurses on duty, everyone else has gone to the hospital cafeteria to eat, and no one comes to disturb the couple's space together. Lu Zhang opened his mouth and ate it. "You can eat it? We still have it at home." Comrade Ye bought a lot of meat and vegetables from Qianxiang. "That's too polite." Feng Qingxiu took back her chopsticks and lowered her head to eat the rice. "It's all meat. Why didn't you put some vegetables in the lunch box for me? You won't just eat a big table of meat, right? Don't you feel tired?" Lu Zhang laughed and said, "There are vegetables, but I didn't serve them for you. In the army, meals are arranged according to rank. A few guards and orderlies eat meat less frequently. Even I don't eat meat every day. How can I feel tired?" I asked Zhu Lei to cut bacon and stew half a pot of radishes, and steamed a dried chicken. The appetites of the troops were very big, so it was rare for them to have a hearty meal, so they could eat enough. Feng Qingxiu hummed, and while eating, she took out a few oranges and gave them to him. After Lu Zhang finished the oranges, she also finished her meal. There was half left in the lunch box, so Lu Zhang ate them all. He put the orange peels back into the space and opened the window to disperse the smell. Fortunately, the fragrance of the food covered up the fragrance of the oranges. Did not arouse any suspicion all afternoon. After Lu Zhang left, Feng Qingxiu spent all her time reading books. There was a lot worth learning in the international medical journals that were sent to her. Today was relatively leisurely. Feng Qingxiu got off work on time and met Su Maiziang as soon as she walked out of the hospital. Su Maiziang pulled Shenfeng towards her. "Sister-in-law Qingxiu, don't be too busy getting off work. Come and check with my Xiaofeng to see if there are any sequelae from the last fight with Ye Yan. He keeps complaining that he has a headache." After hearing this, Feng Qingxiu felt something bad in her heart. Only female compatriots understand the pain. It just so happens that on the first day, I am awesome. I have finished updating 10,000 words. Please join me in praying that Zbao little fatty will go home soon. Stop playing with my computer. I am coding little fatty. He had to press on me and almost smashed my computer. Back to the 60s, the struggle career of a charmed wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 1547. It's not that Feng Qingxiu is overthinking, but that Su Maiziang's character is there. Have a headache? Have you caught a cold recently? Or have you bumped your head without paying attention? Feng Qingxiu had a very gentle and kind smile on her face. Didn't you check your whole body inside and out last time? Once again? And the old doctor at the hospital checked it in person, and there was no problem except for a little bruise on the face. Su Maiziang was stunned for a moment, then said, "I took such good care of him, how could he catch a cold? How could he bump into her? It must be the sequelae of the fight with Ye Yan." Her attitude was tough and her expression was certain, making it impossible for anyone to question her. Lu Zhang had a rest today, and Feng Qingxiu wanted to go home early, but this matter involved Ye Yan, so she had to suppress the anxiety in her heart, bent down and said directly to Shenfeng, "Shenfeng, do you have a headache?" Shenfeng wanted to answer whether his head hurt, but suddenly remembered his mother's instructions, and shook his head instead of nodding. "It hurts. My head hurts so much that I want to roll over," Shenfeng said without hesitation. People who really have headaches will show up in their expressions, complexions, etc. It is a kind of pain that cannot be suppressed. Feng Qingxiu has seen many patients and has experienced illness herself, so she naturally understands it very well. People like Shenfeng, who has a soothing expression and a normal complexion, if a child has a headache, Feng Qingxiu would rather believe that the sow climbed the tree. Sumai Xiang said, "Did you hear that? He is already in severe pain. It must be the sequelae of the fight with Yayan." Feng Qingxiu stood up straight. "Comrade Sumai Xiang, you don't have to repeat the sentence again and again. Whether it is the sequelae of a fight or a headache caused by illness and a bump, you can tell after a checkup at the hospital." It was time to get off work, and many doctors and nurses came out one after another. They all felt strange when they saw this. An old doctor with white eyebrows opened his mouth to ask what was going on. Feng Qingxiu said hurriedly, "Dr. Hong, you are leaving later." "Excuse me. Please check with Comrade Shenfeng." "What to check?" Dr. Hong asked smoothly. "It's important to check what's causing his headache." Feng Qingxiu explained Sumai Xiang's purpose in a few words. "Of course I can also check on Comrade Shenfeng, but in order to avoid suspicion, I still need to trouble the old doctor." "You?" Dr. Hong said strangely, "Let's not talk about avoidance of suspicion. Doctors don't distinguish between avoidance of suspicion and not avoidance of suspicion. How long has it been since the fight between the two children? Why can't the headache at this time be related to the fight last month? What is the reason for this headache? If there are too many, it may be due to illness and fever, bumps and falls, or lack of sleep." Feng Qingxiu said softly, "Comrade Sumai Xiang thinks it is a sequelae of a fight, so we have to take it seriously." "Why should we take it seriously?" Dr. Hong felt very enlightened. "You're right, let's go to the hospital for a good checkup. There's nothing you can do about wasting medical resources. Sumai Xiang's family is powerful, and Ye Xiangqian's family is not an ordinary working-class family." Feng Qingxiu nodded, "Comrade Sumai Xiang, please take Comrade Shenfeng with you." Sumai Xiang did not respond, but said suddenly but unexpectedly to Feng Qingxiu, "We have to call Yayan and his parents over. My son has the sequelae of a fight with Yayan, and their family must be responsible." Hearing her words, everyone present shook their heads secretly. Back to the 60s, the struggle career of a charmed wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 1548. Feng Qingxiu thought for a moment and looked at the time on her watch. It was almost the time for the soldiers to rest, so Shenqing must have time as well. "So," she said to the little nurse Lu Yan, who was about to eat but stood watching the fun, "Xiao Lu, please come to my house and tell Comrade Yes Yangqian to come over, and then tell Comrade Lu Zhang, if you send someone to invite Comrade Shenqing, it involves the children of both families, so both parents must be present, so you can't just believe one family's words." When Feng Qingxiu visited the ward, she was often accompanied by this little nurse, and she was also responsible for infusions, injections, and bandages for many of Feng Qingxiu's patients. She simply responded and ran away quickly. "Just ask Comrade Ye Qianqian to come." "Why call Shenqing?" Sumai Xiang said unhappily. Feng Qingxiu smiled slightly, "Comrade Shenfeng has such a severe headache, how could he not ask Comrade Shenqing to be present? Many things are more convenient for gay men to negotiate, so we have to pay attention to the impact." Sumai Xiang calmly said nothing. "When are you going to check me out?" "I'm going to have a headache," Shenfeng said. Feng Qingxiu looked down at him, "Why are you in such a hurry?" "I want to go home and eat meat, big meat," Shen Feng swallowed when he thought of the big meat buns he had eaten in the morning. Okay, let's go in now and let Grandpa Hong check you out. Last time, Grandpa Hong gave you a checkup to make sure that there is nothing wrong with you except the bruises on your face. Feng Qingxiu reached out and gave Dr. Hong a hand. Dr. Hong is an old military doctor. He followed the army in many wars. He only retired from the battlefield when he was old and enjoyed division-level treatment. When he was taking Shen Feng's temperature, Lu Zhang and Ye Qianqian arrived first. What's going on? The little nurse couldn't explain clearly. Lu Zhang had a serious face. He had been busy all summer after taking office, and his skin was tanned. He could scare children to tears when he had a straight face. At least, Shen Feng was so frightened that his face turned pale. Su Maiziang opened her mouth and said, "Don't scare my son." Feng Qingxiu said softly, "Our Lu Zhang was born like this. He is used to giving orders to the comrades below him at work. He is a bit calm and self-confident. He did not mean to scare Comrade Shen Feng." Su Maiziang snorted and said to Dr. Hong, "Have you finished measuring? Just measure your body temperature and how long do you have energy?" Dr. Hong was a little unhappy. "I'm a doctor and you're a doctor? I said there's nothing wrong with your son. You don't believe me. Now take your temperature. Why are you yelling here? Don't you know the hospital should keep quiet?" "My son has a severe headache," Su Maiziang said loudly, as if her loud voice meant she was confident. "Your son is not sick." Dr. Hong glanced at the thermometer, then looked at Shen Feng's face, rolled his eyelids, and checked his pulse, which showed that he is currently normal. There are some clues on his face. His complexion is normal, he doesn't have a fever, so he doesn't look sick. He was originally from a family of Chinese medicine practitioners. He first learned Tang to Ji, and later changed to Western medicine. Maybe we bumped into each other. Dr. Hong, please check carefully." Feng Qingxiu glanced at Su Maiziang and said to him. Su Maiziang said to Dr. Hong angrily, "My son has a headache." "It's a headache. The sequelae of the fight with Ye Yan have nothing to do with the temperature you took. Why is it so difficult for you to check him?" You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Back to the 60s, the struggle career of a charmed wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 1549. Although Dr. Hong knew in his heart that Ye Yan could be cleared only by giving Shen Feng a thorough examination, he was very disgusted with Su Maiziang's unreasonable and wasteful behavior of medical resources. Just as he was about to speak, Yes Yangqian said, "Dr. Hong, please check it out." "You want me to check him too?" Dr. Hong looked at Ye Qianqian. Of course, Yes Yangqian looked serious. He was not as handsome and burly as Lu Zhang, but his complexion was darker than him, and he looked more intimidating. "It has been so long, and I have already shouldered all the burdens for my son. Responsibility. I can't let people continue to make complaints about my son now more than a month later. Comrade Su Maiziang keeps saying that Comrade Shen Feng has a headache, so check it out thoroughly to see if it is a sequelae like she said. Headache, brain fever, or bumping. He has no shortage of money. The two of them have lived a comfortable life these past few years, and their expenses are not large. The old man does not need his filial piety. At most, he can use some money to support his comrades. He has not only 8,000 yuan but also 5,000 yuan in his hands." However, he didn't want to give it to Su Maiziang. Not even a cent to give it would be to admit that she had slandered Ye Yan endlessly. Seeing Su Maiziang's familiarity with blackmail, Ye Qianqian knew that today's matter was not the beginning, nor would it be the end. Dr. Hong nodded. After completing various head examinations on Shen Feng, Shen Qing also arrived. He saluted Lu Zhang and Ye Qianqian and asked, "What's going on?" "Comrade Guard can't explain clearly, not sure. Lu Zhang raised his hand to stop Ye Qianqian and told the whole story one by one. Shen Qing's face suddenly turned red, feeling embarrassed and angry, and his eyes could almost have flames rising 10 feet high. Dr. Hong said promptly, "The child is fine. He has no fever, no illness, and no brain disease. He is just a little malnourished. You just need to give him something good to eat in the future. How could there be no problem?" He kept saying that he had a headache. Su Maixiang was having a cold war with Shen Qing. She didn't care whether Shen Qing was present or whether he was ashamed. She said loudly, "Didn't you doctors say that? The structure of the brain is the most complex in the world. Even the most complex machines cannot compare to the brain. It is difficult for ordinary people to explore its secrets. The cause of the headache is naturally not a fever but a sequelae of the fight with Yayan. How many times do you want me to say it? Su Maixiang, you've had enough." Shen Qing was furious and stretched out his hand to pull her away, preparing to take her and Shen Feng away, but Su Maixiang dodged away. She was also a female soldier in the army, but she couldn't bear the hardship. He retired naturally after getting married. Although he has not participated in training for many years, his skills are still very flexible. "Shen Qing, you are crazy. Your son has a terrible headache. Are you going to make a noise with me?" Su Maixiang was even more aggressive. Shen Qing said coldly, "The doctor said there is nothing wrong with Xiao Feng, but you keep saying that he has a headache and keep pulling it on Yayan's head. What are your intentions?" It was a fight, and it was also a melee. All 4 children were responsible, and they all received punches from each other. Everyone else is fine, but Shen Feng is the only one who is delicate. Shen Qing felt ashamed to see anyone. Su Maixiang said angrily, "My son has a headache, what can I do? Isn't my son your son? You don't care about your son's health at all. If the doctor can't find anything wrong, it must be because the doctor is incompetent and cannot explore the brain." The mystery. Back to the 60s, the struggle career of a charmed wife. Author, Ning Xiaobai. Chapter 1550. When Dr. Hong heard Su Maixiang say that he had no ability, everyone said that he was cheerfully like a Maitreya Buddha, but he couldn't control his temper in front of Su Maixiang, who said, "I can't explore. Cut open the head and check it thoroughly." As he spoke, he rolled up his sleeves. Shen Feng was so frightened that he held his head and closed his eyes, and said loudly, "Don't cut my head, don't cut my head doesn't hurt. My head doesn't hurt at all, don't cut me." "Your head doesn't hurt." Shen Qing looked at his son suddenly, his eyes full of anger. Shen Feng cried so much that his face was covered with tears and snot. He was purely frightened and opened his mouth to answer his father's question. Su Maixiang covered his mouth and said to Shen Qing and Dr. Hong, "You are not allowed to scare my son? By threatening my son, do you want to give in? I won't give you this chance." Subdued. Dr. Hong, Lu Zhang, his wife, and Yes Yangqian shook their heads in unison. Shen Qing reached out and pulled away her hand covering Shen Feng's mouth, pushed her aside, looked at Shen Feng fiercely, and said, "Shen Feng, tell me the truth. What is going on? Your head, it doesn't hurt, why do you say you have a headache?" After hearing this, Shen Feng glanced at Su Maixiang timidly. "Don't look at Mom, look me in the eyes and tell the truth." Shen Qing felt like his face had been ripped off and trampled on by others. His tone was not gentle at all, but very harsh. "Chen Feng," Su Maixiang shouted. Shen Feng's body trembled, and he immediately closed his open mouth tightly, his tears and nose not stopping. Seeing this, "What else don't you understand?" Shen Qing felt disheartened for a while and had no strength to ask further questions. He turned around and saluted Yes Yangqian. "I'm sorry, Comrade Yes Yangqian, I didn't teach my son well and I was not strict with my wife. I will give it to you, my sister-in-law and Dr. Hong, it's all causing trouble." Ye stepped forward and patted his shoulder, as long as the child is fine. Although Shen Qing was influenced by Su Maiziang and has not moved in the position of deputy captain for 5 years, Shen Qing is a good person and yes, Yang Qian will not confuse him with Su Maiziang. Feng Qingxiu handed the inspection report to Shen Qing. Comrade Shen Qing, I have read it all. It is indeed as Dr. Hong said. This is very important. It is important evidence to prevent Su Maiziang from continuing to extort money. There were no problems during the 2 inspections. If Su Maiziang used this reason to trouble Yes Yang Qian again, Yes Yang Qian could completely hand the matter over to the army. Shen Qing held the report tightly and said, "Thank you, sister-in-law. It's not hard, just like Comrade Ye Qian said, the child is fine, and we parents can rest assured." Feng Qingxiu remembered what Dr. Hong said before, the child is a little malnourished. Even if you are busy with tasks, you have to take time out. It's not a good thing to worry about your child's nutrition and health in the long run. I know, thank you sister-in-law for reminding me. Shen Qing thanked Dr. Hong again. Seeing that he was humble and polite, Dr. Hong slowly calmed down and said, "You have to take good care of me as a daughter-in-law. If you waste medical resources again and again, I'm afraid it will be recorded in your account again. Do you think it's okay to waste medical resources?" Innocent. Shen Qing smiled bitterly, said goodbye to them, took Shen Feng and left without even looking at Su Maiziang. At this moment, Su Maiziang still did not repent and followed angrily, "Shen Qing, stop here. My son has such a severe headache. It is the sequelae of the fight. If you don't help him seek justice, you will take it away for what?" The sound gradually faded away, and the people in the room dispersed.